Hey everybody. So running a little behind, but that's okay. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah, I'm just waiting on my homie to show up for this. But yeah, so this is kind of a ad hoc, not a yeah, sort of a new thing, but kind of a random thing. I'm going to give a try here every now and again. Gives me an opportunity to talk about some things outside of the normal scope of some of the other podcasts I get involved with and deal with. Here, I can actually talk about things surrounding my life after the gym, things that led up to the initial, or not the initial, but like the slow then immediate cascade and failure that led to KV Martial Athletics, the Alpha Scully Fight Team, and just how my life kind of imploded or exploded on itself because of just life in general. A lot of it's about accountability. A few things of it all is that, yeah, I shut everything down in 2019 due to a wide variety of health issues, mainly mental health and behavioral health. I was dealing with a long standing issue with depression and, of course, my opioid addiction, alcoholism, and a host of other things that led to the issue that was the gym coming apart. And just like anything, leadership in any organization starts and ends with leadership at the top. So the work I've done here in the past 4 years has been really diving into figuring out here at my core the things that I need to improve upon so I can live a better life, not just for me, but for those around me, and most importantly for my wife and my children. Because the fact is, the gym uh, took first before anybody else, and that was a problem. It was a serious problem that led to all those things listed before, to include my suicide attempt with a intentional overdose on opioids. So yeah, but again, we had an interesting break for 4 years, and that 4 year break allowed me some really great opportunities to grow and like focus on change and changing myself. And a lot of that has been a lot of soul searching, a lot of like internal work, a lot of interpersonal work between me and my wife and the rest of my family and my children, and a lot of those things that will has really been heavy on my mind as to what I'm doing with what I'm doing here online these days, besides the rubber chickens and everything else. A lot of stuff I'm talking about now is, again, mindfulness, mental health. I mean, everything I was doing with the gym And a lot of the veteran stuff I was doing before was involved in the mental health community. It was involved intentionally for dealing with at-risk youth, dealing with people going through recovery. I mean, all at the core of it was dealing with mental health. And as a result of it, you get involved and get invested. And if you don't work on yourself and you don't come from a basis of internal strength and internal stability, it's really hard to actually help other people when you yourself haven't done the work. And at my fault of it all, I was projecting a lot of my issues, projecting a lot of my intentionality and the things I was seeking on the tribe, so to speak, on the team, on the community that I was trying to create a community of strength, stability, care, concern, and wellness. Because it was the stuff that I needed. I mean, I talked about often that the gym is the place that kept me sober, when the fact matter is that was a lie. I was staving off a lot of my sobriety and dipping into the medicine cabinet, and it was the excuse that I gave to myself and for the intention of the goodwill of others that yeah, the gym, the program kept me sober, but the fact is that it was a lie. It honestly led to more of my return and breakaway from my sobriety and dealing with my recovery issues. And with that, um, dealing with other people and their trauma and their issues, especially with a lot of the kids that I worked with in reference from the center, a lot of my mental health clients and behavioral health clients, especially the at-risk youth clients that I had to deal with, or not had to deal with. I had the honor and I had the the great opportunity to deal with a lot of kids who didn't have an opportunity to succeed due to health and circumstance and home life. And having been one of those kids who had an interesting childhood and a lot of it dealing with trauma and then abandonment, and with that, create a foundation of instability in of itself. And I thought with the idea with the gym that I could create a basis of stability. I could create a basis of opportunity. I could create a basis that breaking the cycle of this issue about at-risk youth and ACEs. The problem with that, however, is this issue about vicarious trauma and this issue about compassion or empathy fatigue. And for those who aren't aware of those things, vicarious trauma is this issue about, and of course, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a behavioral health technician, but in short scope, what vicarious trauma entails is that you are taking on the emotional baggage and weight of a person that you're involved with. I mean, this isn't the technical term, but in the very simple aspect of what vicarious trauma does is you, because you're compassionate and you have empathy, you carry the weight of others that shouldn't have been yours in the first place. Um, but you, because you're empathetic and you're compassionate, you take that on anyways because you care. You want to help those around you. The problem with that issue though is if you again haven't done the work and you yourself are still in that process of dealing with your own baggage, your own trauma, your own emotional issues, it ends up being like an association of pain, of likeness of pain. And in the process, neither one of you are well enough to help each other. You guys, the individuals, will feed off of each other's emotional energy to a point. And it sounds sounds silly, but the fact is, we are social creatures, and as a result of it, we do uh, live off of each other's emotionality. And I mean, if it's a stressful day in a stressful household and everybody's hyped up, I mean that anxiety hypes up in that room for the family. And it's the same with when you're constantly dealing with people who are in the worst cases. I mean, dealing with the kids that got referred from the program, dealing with kids who have substance abuse in the home, dealing with physical and emotional and sexual abuse in the home, and hearing about that weight of knowledge, it crushes you emotionally, crushes your soul. I mean, it crushes like uh, this sense of self and what you can do, and more importantly, what it does is you feel helpless in a lot of ways, especially if you're a coach, you're an instructor, You're just somebody who is outside the standard family structure that is normal, and you're just on the outside. And when being on the outside, you don't have the authority, you don't have the legal accountability. You're so limited as to the things that you can do, and there's a lot of like forlorning and worry, and just that issue of I want to help, but I can't help, and that hurts. So, in the capacity of what a coach can do, like in the case of I did with the boxing gym and teaching martial arts, is that I was in hoping to empower, and empowerment is a funny word in of itself, but I was hoping to empower my students, my athletes, my clients that at least we can build something that's their own personal accountability, something that's strong and unique to them, and hopefully they can grow outward with it. And I mean, at its core, it's noble. At least the thought process behind it is noble. Is that give somebody the tools or teach them to have the tools of self accountability and strength from within by forcing them to face a certain level of adversity, physical, intellectual, etc., and make them strong or help them find the way to be strong having faced that adversity and create resiliency. It's in a lot of ways, it's kind of like how it's done in the military when a brand new recruit, whether regardless of the branch, is brought in. They tear them down as an individual and build them back up as a team member and part of a bigger situation, part of a bigger organization, a bigger sense of self. So it gives them something to carry and something to be proud of and something to be belonging to. And I mean, I went through the same process when I went through the army as well. I got broken back down because, I mean, the fact is, the army, in a lot of ways, saved my life from what it had been before because I was running away from my life um, prior to the army. And the army gave me a sense of self, sense of purpose, and sense of identity. It did also a great job at tearing me apart emotionally and everything else because I was in a very toxic environment as in my chain of command when I was on active duty. And I wasn't in the right place, anyways. The right place in my life, right place in my emotional structure, and right place in just in general. It wasn't until I was in the guard and became an NCO and was leading soldiers that things started to turn around. But the problem being with it is that identity also got attributed to a negative identity of, hey, I'm here in the guard. This is who I am. I'm Sergeant Leffler. And, but what we do in the guard is we hung out and we drank a lot. And that was also a toxic environment. So it was always like this transition of trying to find a sense of self, sense of identity, and sense of purpose by associating with an organization or a group. And what this does in some cases, when somebody leaves one social group to find another, they glean onto something that they have a sense of identity and belonging. And that's what the thing that gyms do. And that's the thing that martial arts programs do. And just any other like group social program does is it gives a person a sense of belonging. It gives them a sense of tribes, gives them a sense of purpose and identity. And those are great and noble and important things. The problem, however, in those structures is if the person doesn't have a certain level of resiliency and sense of self, and they try to adopt and identify that of the group and the tribe without having that sense of core and strength internally for them figuring it out, they are susceptible to the situation that can be toxic of that group and organization. I mean, this is where cults come from. This is where a cult of personality. This is where people get abused and used and misused is in those sorts of situations. And back to where dealing with that as a coach, dealing that as a teacher, dealing that as an instructor in the martial arts, is you're spending a lot of time with people and a lot of people, especially the old tradition of martial arts is again, it's paternal, it's in the backyard, it's tribal, and it's one on one. And the same is still carried forward in modern tradition today, where you are sitting there with an athlete, holding pads for them, prepping them for a fight, prepping them for a BJJ match, prepping them for an activity whatsoever. But the fact is, you're spending a lot of time getting to know this person, getting to know who they are, getting to know their wants, their wishes, their dreams. A good coach knows their athlete. A good coach knows their life. In the long run, a good coach uh, can have the opportunity to in essence adopt that athlete, that student, as an extension of their family because they spend so much time with them. It's just like any other friend group. You spend so much time with a person, you get to know a person, and you create a bond. Now, the problem with that, I hate to say the problem, but the situation arises when you get to know somebody so well and you get involved with them so deeply, is that you carry a lot of the weight of their circumstance and their situation. I constantly am referencing this issue about the weight of knowledge. In the case of what's happening with the gym and the team, and more importantly, the clients that I was dealing with, mainly the behavioral health youth clients I was dealing with, and the sobriety clients I was dealing with, is the weight and knowledge of their circumstances, having access and privy and being part of their treatment plans, and in some cases, some of their legal issues. So, and knowing things about people, and especially in a small town, is very difficult because I mean, in a larger population, you have an opportunity to like spread the weight, spread the issue of you have more people and you have less association. But in a town of 5,000, I mean, everybody knows everybody, and everybody has influence from everybody and everybody has information about everybody. And with that, when you know stuff about people, and especially when you know that it's something you legally, physically, morally, whatever, you have no capability, no means to do the things you want to do to help them because you lack all that authority, it hurts. So what you're stuck with, what you are left to deal with is being there, being compassionate, being an ear, and you're constantly taking things in. You're internally carrying all that emotional baggage and that weight, and you're constantly filling your cup full of their emotional energy, their information, and if your cup isn't prepared, we call this the window of tolerance. In a lot of ways, it's a term that I've picked up from therapy. Is that if your window of tolerance is so limited, you can't bring on and take on all that extra emotional energy and that emotional weight and all that knowledge. So, and when that hits a breaking point, it spills over. And the case of what's happening with me with the gym is my cup was one, not very strong, stable, and it was also full of crap. It was full of my own baggage, my own issues. So my window of tolerance, my window of capability to help other people was so small anyways. And I had no real opportunity to be helpful despite my intentions, despite my goodwill and my purpose behind it. And I'm not alone in this situation. I know the world around that anybody who has been a teacher, anybody who's been a coach, anybody who has been a mentor has this same scenario where they have taken on the emotional baggage, taken on the emotional knowledge and weight of that knowledge into themselves uh, in out of love for the person that they are being compassionate toward, and they want to help but they can't, and it hurts and it weighs on you. So the question being is, how do we do the things necessary to not carry that burden, not and if we are carrying that burden, how that burden doesn't drown us and how that burden doesn't break us, and also recognizing those boundaries is set forward to recognize that we are our window, how being mindful and aware of what our window is, of what we can handle of knowledge and emotion. And the other part, and this is hoping where my guest would show up, but he hasn't, but hopefully he still will here, is some of the means and methods for an individual to um, release that burden, release that weight, and find a means to temporarily hold it, but let it go. Um, and it's taken me and I'm still working on this, but it has taken me 4 years to realize and recognize that obviously I was deficient. Obviously my vessel of which I could hold all this emotion and all this baggage and weight of knowledge was insufficient, and then on top of all that my window of tolerance was also insufficient. So um, sorry about that. With that in mind, how do I do it? Well, the fact is, what I've learned through therapy, what I've learned through experience, and what I've learned through observation and learned through failure. I mean, failure is a big part of that. Is you establish boundaries, and a lot of those boundaries start with yourself as to what are the things you are unwilling to deal with. What are the things you are unwilling to approach? What are the things you are also um, not ready to handle? And understanding that if I know what I can't do, know what I don't want to do, and know the things that I'm unwilling to do, that's a basis to start. Now it sounds negative, but from there you can understand your limitations. Now, like in a physical sense, I'm 5'6", so I will never be able to dunk. So I know that I will never be able to dunk just on my own, but I can work from there with added tools. I know that being 5'6", that I don't want to play basketball. So that's something I'm unwilling to do. So with that, when it comes to like establishing those boundaries and understanding a basis of what we can, cannot, and will not, that's a place to start for yourself. The other part about that is communication. You communicate to not just yourself, but to those around you, that sphere of influence, of as to your boundaries and what the things you are willing to do, not willing to do, and things that you can and cannot do based upon whatever arbitrary means, physically, intelligently, emotionally, whatever. So you establish what you can, can't, and will and won't. Um, and you communicate that to your sphere of influence and your trusted circle of influence. And then the third layer is when you're dealing with new people coming in, is the thing I've also adopted is this issue or this idea of brutal honesty. Being brutally honest with yourself, with others, and as a result of that, it creates accountability for everybody to make sure that you're operating within those boundaries of the things that you are willing to do, won't do, may be able to do, and and you can move on from there. What that brutal honesty does, like I said, it holds you accountable to the things that you have done, won't do, and things you're moving toward as a potential for success and growth. And also holds those around you accountable as to this is where I stand. Now, the trick with those boundaries is, and this is where integrity is a big issue, is having the integrity, that sense of self, of I will have that strength and integrity of self that I will not violate my principles or my boundaries, and also having the others that will do the same by not violating your principles and your boundaries and being respectful of those things. And this is the part about communication, and also the part of making sure along with those boundaries are like the type of people you're willing to associate with, the type of clients, the type of friends, the type of random acquaintances you are willing to deal with. Because the fact is, you can only deal with so many people. You can only deal with so much knowledge. You can only deal with so much emotional energy. And back to like the situation with the gym is, I mean, on the books, I have 300 students and clients locally and online. And that's a lot of information constantly coming at you. And of course, you have all the social media attached to it. So that's a constant barrage of data and information coming in. And and plus, I'm trying to manage my own life, manage my students, manage my home life, and which I was failing at. And with that, all that management, it's so much data coming in, so much emotional data coming in. And I was drowning in it. And I'm not the only one who also drowns in all of that weight and all that emotional weight and all that data. So the question being is, where's the priorities here as to who has the highest priority to for me to spend my emotional resources on? And with that, trying to identify who are those people. I mean, that's the part that creating a structure of boundaries are. Who are those people I'm willing to spend time and effort on? Who are those people that I'm willing to spend emotional energy on? Who are those people I'm willing to trust or trust in the fact that I can take on their burden, take on their knowledge, take on their information? Who are those people? And that's up to you to figure that out. The problem, and this is the big problem about being an instructor, especially when you're taking something that you love, your passion, turning your passion into a profession, is a great thing. And the idea that is, if you do a thing that you love, you'll never work a day of your life. That's cool. That's a nice Instagram story, but it's not reality because there's so much more than just the passion of the Filipino martial arts. Just so much more about the passion of teaching. There's the whole other side of this professional structure of you have to be you have to be a businessman. You have to be a marketer. You have to deal with HR. You are HR. You are all this like infrastructure that a corporation has. Um, if you lack it, you're doing it all. Plus, you're doing the issues of management of the gym, management of your students, management of yourself, plus the content of education and the means of what you're teaching. So it's a lot of stuff that you have to juggle. So the, and with that, it burns you out. That passion goes away, and the thing that you love that you wanted to share gets shattered and broken apart. And that's essentially what happened to me. Is I love the martial arts. I love coaching people for combat sports. I love working with youth and mentoring. But I really hate business management. I really suck at it. I really hate billing, and I really hate all of like the business side of a business. It's funny, but it's the truth. But who owns a business, who is also like a sole proprietor, who's a one person shop, they will also identify and understand this fact that if they are doing this, if they're doing it all, they don't have time off. Mentally, they never have time off. They maybe shut the doors and be at home, but they're constantly thinking about that business. And especially if you are the one person shop, you have to do it all. You're doing on the marketing, you're doing on the management, you're doing making sure that you are up to snuff physically, emotionally, educationally, all those things to make sure you are providing the service to your clients and your students at the highest level. And at the end, I mean, if you don't have a means to deal with mindfulness and long-term resiliency and just have means to like let things go and have that support, that'll crush you. And in my case, it crushed me. And I know I'm not the only person who's gone through that situation where they are trying to do it all by themselves, and in the process of doing it all by themselves, they turn something that they love into a profession, and they failed. They failed at some form or fashion, but the fact is they failed. And that's not a bad thing. Failure is important. And this is that part about building resiliency is you have to have enough failures, enough small failures and big failures to build yourself back up. I mean, it's like in case of fighting. You learn from your losses. People remember when they lose. And hopefully that loss doesn't crush them and leave them behind in a point where they cannot succeed or are unwilling to succeed. Hopefully that failure isn't so egregious that they cannot find a way out. And it's okay to spend time on the down. It's okay to spend time to recuperate after that fight, after that failure. And it's that issue about getting back up and moving forward. And in the case of with business ownership and dealing with students and clients, you're going to fail a lot. And you're going to fail on several different things, and that is okay. That's part of the process. And just like I said with resiliency, is you have to be met with so much failure and so many adverse situations that you build a certain level of toughness based upon successes and failures moving forward. The trick, however, the goal in the end of facing all that failure is that you've you have a breadth of understanding, a breadth of opportunity to explain intelligently, cogently, the difference between those different levels of adversity, failure, so you can build a means to cope with those things. So, in the case of like an injury, let's talk about, let's jumping away from business failure, but let's building resiliency for injury and having an understanding of physical and mental toughness. The thing with combat sports and martial arts is you get hit. I mean, the game is get hit. And the fact is, you get hit enough, you get tough enough. And on top of all that, in that training of getting hit, toughening up so you can hit people and they can hit you back and you can survive the situation. And on top of all that, have the experience of understanding how to hit them better and get hit less. You also have built up the experience and the terminology and the language to describe the differences between the different levels of pain. We've been able to describe what's the difference between an injury, discomfort, um, true, truly catastrophic injury, okay, and stress. You'll have that opportunity to intellectually explain the differences between all of them. And on top of all that, you'll be able to understand that and express in your own level as to what is the difference as to I'm tired, uncomfortable, um, I'm stressed. This is actually broken. This just sore, and you're able to internally understand those differences with yourself, and thereby create that certain level of resiliency for yourself, and it's unique to everybody. Now, using that analogy to towards students, as a coach, as an instructor, is how do you build up the uh, that internal list of terminology, the internal list of language as to describe the different types of students and situations that you are resilient enough to handle. And that takes time, experience, and also I would express mentorship as to somebody else who can help you along that journey. Because suffering it all alone on your own is a really hard way to go about things. And it took me a lot of failure and ultimate failure of the gym to figure that out, that doing it all by myself is a way to fail. This idea of the lone wolf dies alone. This idea of I'll be the lone warrior on the field, the lone warrior in the field dies alone. It takes a tribe, it takes a community, it takes an organization, it takes a team to make people succeed. I mean, we talk about how it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it also takes a team to make a coach in a gym successful. But again, going back to the very beginning of all that is success and failure in an organization starts and ends with leadership. And if you, the coach, are not strong and resilient and mindful of how to address your issues, your boundaries, and your situations, you yourself are going to fail. And that's a hard truth. And hopefully, we having little chats like this will help give people an opportunity to learn from my mistakes, uh, find it that it's okay, do some self advocacy as to understanding that it's not only just them. It's just this is a human thing that we fail and we fail at business and we take on too much because we get excited and because we're so filled with compassion and love for what we do and those who are around us. We have so much love for all those things that we take on too much, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because the fact is that we have so much compassion. That means that we are doing something positive, or the intention is doing something positive. Because if we didn't care about our students, we didn't care about our clients, we didn't care about our athletes, then we wouldn't be successful in my mind. I mean, you can be a great technician, you can be a great technical coach, you can be a great source of information and have uh, expert understanding of all things particular to that field. But you have to have the emotional intelligence and the social intelligence and mastery to be able to be more than just an encyclopedia. You got to be more than just a source of information. You are the vehicle and that bond, that partnership, that friendship, that mentorship between coach and athlete, student and teacher, all those things is it's a powerful and beautiful thing. And again, that kind of teaching is built on love. The both of you love the thing that you're doing, and so you're willing to spend so much time to do it. And for one to the other, the mentor is willing to share all that time and effort, love and failure to a person who is new and trying. And again, sharing that is powerful. In the process, though, sharing that is you share information and knowledge about you and your students. And the weight of the knowledge of student circumstance can be a lot to carry, and it's a big burden. And if you are not mindful enough into a means to handle that, you, the coach, the mentor, the teacher, have a real potential of failing you, your team, and your athlete. So the questions would be, just like with anybody else, is what do I do with the weight of knowledge? What do I do with the the situation that is uh, the things that I have to deal with and that information? And how do I be mindful? So I've been rattling on. I'm going to show you guys a video of some of the stuff I was talking about. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go and violate some personal boundaries and some information, but I have some students I was incredibly proud of, and I never really got an opportunity to like showcase who they are and what they were and what they meant, and it hurts. And I hope at some point I will get the opportunity to reconcile uh, and speak with them and talk to them about what occurred and talk to them as an adult as to the things that were going on behind the scenes to help give them context and explanation. So go ahead and check out this little like 1 minute video, it, and I'll talk about it here afterwards. One sec. Let's find this video. Yeah, my partner in crime today hasn't gone back to me, so there may have been a mix up on the time, and well, I'll end up having to try to do this again. So yeah, just like a lot of things that are new, there's little hiccups, and yeah, I may have not been clear as to uh, what day specifically and what time that they were to join me, but we can, I can definitely try this again, and I'm intending to do this again. But just to shift gears a little bit, like I said, I want to showcase a couple of things that I never really got to talk about. And since I'm starting social media all over again, I'm having to start all over again with all my stuff that I'm putting out there. So there's stuff in there that I never got an opportunity, or I'm having to start over and explain. So enjoy this for about a minute, and I'll talk about it here. I've had the picture. That's weird, I guess. You know I'm recording all this. Yeah, so I can bring that up again. But that was the last team. They give me another year. If I had another year, COVID aside, if I had another year with that group of students there, I could have made several great athletes out of them. I had a number of them that had great potential of being combat sports athletes. But I mean, all things aside, I just didn't have the opportunity to make that happen because life and otherwise. Now, the weight of knowing that I let them go, and the fact that I left things unsaid with a lot of them, because when I shut the gym down, I put out a just general letter as to saying, "Hey, here's an official letter. Coach Kurt stepping aside, stepping down for health reasons," and which were true. It's just I didn't go into a lot of detail because it was disseminated out to 300 plus students. But this group of students here, I'll go back into it. This group of students were at the core, honestly. I mean, a lot of these kids they were my student for about 10 years. And I mean, at the time of this video, the majority of them were graduating from high school. And at this point in their lives, they at this point in their lives, this group of students here, I mean, they themselves have all graduated, moved on, and doing really cool things as adults, but I didn't really get a chance to say goodbye to them. And knowing circumstances behind a lot of their situations, which I mean, all of them had great home lives to a point, and they also have their own bit of baggage. And it's always really interesting that the things that students will confide in you as a coach and as a teacher that they don't necessarily will confide with the parents and those around them. There's a different level of like communication that occurs there. In some cases, like it's an older brother kind of thing. It's you learn things about people just by spending time with them. And with these kids, I mean, you get to hear like the dreams and wants and wishes and the things that they were trying to do in their lives. Um, yeah, you get to hear about the stuff that they want to do. And honestly, I really hope that they are starting to achieve those things, that they're starting to have success in their young lives, because they only have their lives ahead of them. Now, of course, you see Cooper here. Cooper's with me all the time, but all these kids, they've all moved on. I don't know if any of them are still here in town. I mean, actually, I do know a couple of them are still here in town. But these kids right here, give me another year with them, COVID aside, and I could have turned a lot of these kids, these young people, into some decent level athletes because they're at that transition. And what's interesting though is talking about resiliency, back to resiliency again, this issue about understanding physical toughness through combat sports, where you do enough reps in the ring, you do enough reps in hard sparring, technical sparring, and you have a breadth of information that you can express the differences between discomfort, pain, injury, whatever, and you can and delineate the differences between all of them. But that comes after surviving a lot of pain, after surviving a lot of injury, after surviving just things that make you uncomfortable. And the hope, again, I've talked about this earlier, is the hope that all of that pain, all of those hard circumstances in the ring, all those difficult things that they faced in the ring, that they survive at the end without two series of injuries, that they can continue on what they do. And this is the thing that's universal of anybody who faces anything hard and difficult and traumatic is that if they face it enough, they'll be resilient, of course, they'll be strong, but at what cost? And the case here is with anybody else, with we may be strong at the end. I'll say that again. We may be strong in the end, but at what cost did it come from? I'll talk about this with combat veterans. I'll talk about this with people who go into law enforcement, people who even go into the medical field, specifically the medical field. They may face a whole bunch of information that is very harmful. They face a level of physical risk, injury, and emotional risk and injury just by the nature of what they do. And in the end, yeah, they may be strong emotionally and capable, but in a lot of cases, and it's a spectrum. In a lot of cases, a lot of people just don't make it emotionally, and they cope negatively with other things, less to be alcohol and any other addiction. But facing all that adversity, facing all that pain and that trauma, people find means to cope with because they the burden was just too much. In the case of dealing with that, like combat, it may be just 18 months for a young person to have spent 18 months in combat, and that and then they live a long life after that, but they're stuck in those 18 months because it was so traumatic, and that weight and knowledge is so traumatic, and that burden is so traumatic. So the question is, how do we let that go? How do we become resilient? And the fact is, some people just don't, and that's sad, and that's hard, and it's difficult to hear, is that some people just, it was so difficult that just they had no opportunity to succeed through that. And that's awful to talk about. It's awful to hear and awful just to think about that. uh, People just don't make it because we have this hope, we have this want, we have this desire for people just to make it because we're empathetic, loving creatures that we want everybody to succeed. We want everybody to make it in the end. But we have to acknowledge the fact that Some people just don't make it, and it's sad. And so, what do we do with that? And knowing the weight of that some of your students just won't make it. I mean, going back to it, knowing the fact that some of these students won't make it. I mean, they have made it, but like I use this in broad term example just for this conversation here is knowing that some of your students may not make it. Is that your responsibility to hold? Is that your responsibility to carry? Is that your responsibility as a coach to manage that emotional weight and burden? And the answer is no. And it's taken me a long time, and I'm still working on it in a lot of cases to learn to let things go. And this was my hope today with bringing my friend on here to talk about this stuff and find ways that he has been able to hold on temporary to to the point that he needs to, but he's able to let it go, and so isn't debilitating. And it's a skill that a lot of people should spend time learning, and some people are better at it than others. Obviously, I've taken time to see about learning about it, and I'm still learning about it. But that was my hope is having somebody on here who's very successful at that to do it. So, and talk about like a weight, and I'll bring some other stuff up here. Talk about the weight of burden here, of weight of knowledge and holding on to things. Where's my friend here? Sorry, I'm digging for stuff here. But wasting time here. I will find that later. I'll bring that up later. Um, yeah. I actually, I'll address that. I'll address that particular situation later, I think, in a later conversation. But yeah, I've been rambling on for about 45 minutes to an hour. My friend didn't make it, and I will reconnect with them and see about bringing them on at a different time. And yeah, it's okay. This is the first time. Won't be the last time I talk about stuff like this. Aside from the rubber chicken videos and some of the doctrinal stuff that I teach about FMA, this is really the stuff I want to talk about. This is the stuff where I may not have the space and opportunity to talk about it in another podcast because they're a themed podcast. But spending time to talk about difficult things is really where I want to be. And like I said, the title of this particular episode was supposed to be two FMA dads talking about our emotions with a sidebar that we're sensitive. Well, the fact is we are. And let's talk about like the very simple aspect of the emotional structure here. Um, because I've spent 30 plus years in the martial arts, that the reason why I've done that is because I love it. That notes that I am emotional and sensitive about it, and I carry that emotion and that sensitivity and carry that over as a passion to and excitement to my students. And I hope I have the opportunities to continue to share that excitement and passion to all those students and all those people that I come across who will spend time with me listening and learning. So, yeah, like I said, I'm going to try to do these more often. I'll hang out here for a little bit longer and showcase some other video work, but um, yeah, maybe my friend will pop in, maybe they won't. I don't know. But if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and throw it into the comment section, and I'll be able to address it as I can. Um, but yeah, if you're liking this kind of thing, just let me know if this is something that you are interested in hearing more about. And like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a behavioral health specialist. Um, not I'm just not. Um, Even though that's where a lot of my education, a lot of my experience has lived. But I'm not here giving out doctrinal advice, but just observations and things that I have figured out my own, but nothing from a sense of doing this commercially. I'm just doing this from the sake of I just want to sit here and talk. And if you guys are willing to listen, yeah, pop in and let me know. And anybody who wants to come on here and talk about emotional, difficult things, particular to their experiences as a martial artist, as a coach, shoot me a message on my Facebook page, and I'll be happy to get you on here. Also, of course, they have the Fight House Talks podcast with Guru O'Brien, and we'd be happy to get you on there as well. It's just this stuff that I do here is really not about martial arts. It's I'm talking about recovery. I'm talking about emotionally difficult things and some and successes and failures, and just going throughout the emotional journey that was a martial artist turn a coach, turn a business owner, turn failure. And I think people might be receptive to that fact or to that line of thought of let's talk about our failures. And hopefully, with talking about our failures, we can find a means to succeed, strive forward, and move forward to a form of success. So, yeah, like I said, I've been rambling for about an hour. My friend isn't going to show up, so I'm going to leave you with an outro. If you guys want to do this again, hit me a message, and yeah, I'll do it again. In the meantime, thanks for watching.